Welcome to the podcast, I Don't Know How to Live. This is Tweester.
And Daniela.
And we are going to be doing one on haunted objects. That's right, things that are haunted.
Yes, I love this subject. It's really interesting, and I like that it's not tied down to specific locations, because a lot of these objects are, gifted or inherited and bought and sold and transferred around. Some end up in museums, and so there's a lot of interesting history.
Yeah, you don't have to go to a house to get haunted. The things can come to you.
And some of these are really old, so...
Yeah, it could be anywhere that you find them. You could be out, you think that Grandma is real cute and funny going out antiquing, but honestly she's a bit of a badass, because at any moment she could buy something that ends up being a blood-curdling haunting.
Yeah, being cursed or haunted.
A blight upon your family.
Just like the Annabelle doll, which was, bought in a thrift store, and that's how it got to its owners, the two college students, which we'll talk about later. But...
Yeah, so the moral of the story is don't accept antiques from anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Just burn them all, throw them away. They're not worth money. They're probably just haunted.
Especially dolls.
Dolls, yes. And dolls we have.
Yeah, so let's just go ahead and talk about Robert the doll. This is a really popular one that a lot of people who are into this stuff have already read about. But actually, I've talked to some people who are interested in these types of hauntings, like you and I are, but they've never heard of this.
I'd never heard of Robert the doll.
Okay, well, let's get into this then. First of all, there are two stories of how this doll got into the hands of the little boy who was its owner and who we're going to be talking about. The first one is that the doll was gifted to the little boy by a servant. This is back in 1896, by the way. So gifted to him by a servant of their household who disliked the family and practiced black magic or voodoo, and basically put a curse on the doll and then gifted it to the boy.
They didn't happen to ever say, why the servant disliked the family.
I'm assuming if it's a servant, and it was back then, she was just treated
I'm
poorly,
tired of
possibly.
serving. Yeah.
She's like, fuck this.
She's like, got this black magic, might as well do something with it.
Exactly. So, and then the other one is that his grandfather went to Germany on a trip and came back with the doll as a present. And this one, in that story, the doll was actually originally supposed to be a mannequin in a store, and nobody knows why it became a toy instead. And so Robert the doll is lifelike. It's like the size of a child. It's wearing a sailor uniform, and it has a dog in its lap, and it's kind of creepy. He's got holes in his face now. He has black beady eyes. They're completely black.
He's a big doll then? Like you said, the size of a child.
That's what I read, that it was life size, but the size of a child.
Yeah, it's still, for a doll, really big.
Exactly. So, after it was gifted to this boy, Robert Eugene Otto, which he goes by Gene, so we'll just call him Gene. He loved this doll. He was obsessed with it. He took it everywhere with him. He carried it around. He played with it. He would have conversations with it for hours on end. And sleep with it. But so the servants would say that they would hear him having a conversation with it as if something is talking back to him and communicating back. And then they would hear other voices sometimes.
If it really was a servant that gave that to him, though, then the other servants must be like, oh, fuck you. Now we all have to put up with that doll.
Exactly. Well, because the other servants became frightened of it. Because, they would hear children's laughter, things would get moved around the house, and so things would get destroyed, things would break, rooms would be turned upside down, and a lot of this the parents would blame on the little boy, and he would always say, it was Robert, my doll, and for a long time they didn't believe him. They thought, of course, it's just a little boy, he's blaming it on his imaginary friend or his doll or whatever.
Yeah.
But after a while, so the servants would hear voices and they would experience all of that, and even neighbors and people walking by would say they would see Robert move from window to window when there was nobody there, and sometimes they would hear children laughing when Gene wasn't home at all. So the servants started to get freaked out, and eventually the parents did start to believe him because, you know, like, for instance, one day a plumber was working in the house, and he said he saw the doll on one side of the room, and then he turned around, and when he turned back around, he saw the doll on the other side of the room when nobody came in or out, so nobody could have moved the doll. And that's when the parents were like, okay, maybe there's more to this.
It must have been hard to get service after the stories started circulating. Because every time you had to call and you're like, oh, we got to get a guy to repair the fridge. He was like, wait, is that the Robert the Doll house?
Yeah, he's like, my buddy told me about this. I'm not going there.
Yeah, you could pay me triple.
Yeah,
and you're going to stand in the kitchen while I do it.
Yeah, so even after a while, when Gene was still a kid, he started to become afraid of the doll. Because he said, you know, the doll wanted to hurt him. He woke up screaming in the middle of the night one night, and the parents rushed in, and he said that Robert had tried to kill him and tried to strangle him. But as he got older, he still kept the doll. And after his parents died, he moved to a house. When he was an adult, he moved to a new house called the Artist House. This is all in Key West, Florida, by the way.
Gotcha.
So he moved in this new house. He had a wife, and he put Robert the doll up on the top floor of his house and sat him on a chair looking out the window so people passing by the street could see him. And they would say, and even in the other house, people passing by would say the same thing, that they would see Robert in the window and they would see him disappear and then reappear facing in a different direction. Or they would say that his expressions would change, or that his gaze would follow them as they walked by, which is really weird because his eyes are supposed to be completely black.
What? How are you supposed to be able to tell them?
Exactly.
You're like, I guess you just feel the eyes.
Yeah.
Also, who was the doll maker that was like, you know what children like?
Black
soulless eyes.
Exactly. So eventually his wife, Eugene's wife, just got so creeped out by the doll that she was like, you know what, screw this, we're putting him in the attic.
Yeah,
and
also, you're a grown man.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Like, she said that secondary to soften the blow. That doll's haunted. Also,
Yeah.
you're a grown man. Can we put it in the attic?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, by the way, before they put him in the attic, when they would have visitors, like, their guests would complain about things like things being moved around the house, and Eugene would still say, it wasn't me, it was Robert the doll. It was my doll. But yeah, so the wife got creeped out by him enough to where she's like, oh, we're just gonna put him in the attic. And he stayed up there through their deaths. They died.
So it worked.
Yeah, so this new woman moved into the house, Myrtle, and she never really had problems with him for the longest time. She would hear things in the attic moving around. She would hear voices and children laughing and stuff. But it wasn't until one day she said that Robert locked her into a room, and it terrified her so much that's when she decided to donate him. So she donated him to the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. And she told them that this doll was haunted and that it was evil. And they're like, oh, this is just the rantings of an old lady, you know, whatever. And they kept him in storage for the longest time, but...
Because he was still old, so maybe they're like, well, we won't throw him away, but...
So eventually, enough people had heard about him and knew that the museum had him in their possession, so they would go there asking about this doll, and so then they decided to put him on display permanently. So he's in a glass case there, and... So now people go there to see him, and, you know, they say you're not supposed to disrespect him or take pictures without asking, or he'll bring you misfortune and bad things will happen to you after you leave and all of this crap. So, I mean, he's been attributed...
Wait, did you say take pictures without permission?
Yeah, exactly.
What? I feel like No, that's bullshit. I'm gonna call bullshit on that. Like, I feel like that's the museum curator tired of people. He's like, oh, that's supposed to be $2 a pop.
Well, yeah.
And so I just kind of put that in.
Even if you ask permission, how would you know whether or not the answer is yes?
Yeah.
You know, so...
Well, like, okay, let's say Robert
Maybe
the doll...
you're just supposed to ask, and then you can take a picture and it's fine, but...
It's like an old doll, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't know what a camera phone is. So how... I mean, like, you know, maybe it would know if it was, like... oh yeah, you're taking a picture. Well, where's the gunpowder and the backlay? You know, like, but with a camera phone, a little rectangular
right
item that you're just clicking, and that you don't even have to have light on.
Yeah.
Like how?
Well, I would say maybe he learned technology by seeing people interact with it over time, but he was locked in that attic, I think, for like 20 years or something.
There are people alive
more.
that still don't understand technology.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
like some old wait, by the way, is that supposed to be like the ghost of someone in that doll, or is it supposed to be like demon possessed, or do they have an idea?
There are only theories about it. It's not like Annabelle where they're like, oh, it's definitely a demon or something like that. So there's this guy who wrote a book about Robert the doll, and his theory is that there's this little boy's spirit attached to the doll. But it's not just the little boy, that there are other spirits surrounding the doll, and that they cause him to do things that he does. But
okay, but like at the core it's a little boy, but other spirits can kind of use it as a conduit
yeah,
too.
but still, that's just this guy's theory.
Yeah,
There really is no like definitive answer. So anyways, people go visit, and people have been writing letters to the museum where they say that they've had a lot of misfortune surrounding their life after they left, and they're apologizing profusely to this doll, like, please stop cursing me.
Don't.
Yeah. So divorces, sudden illnesses, car accidents have been attributed to him and to people disrespecting him. I actually have a funny one here, just like a letter that I found, and this is like very mild. It's not like a car accident or anything, but this guy wrote in and he says, "You certainly made a believer out of me. My girlfriend and I visited you on the morning of Monday, March 2nd, 2009. When we passed by you and I made the comment that you were creepy and stated that I was not superstitious about old stories like yours. That very night, I lost my wallet containing all of my cash, both my girlfriend's and my driver's license, and all of our credit cards and ATM cards. Then tried to fly out the next morning and couldn't do that without any photo IDs. So that's just a silly one where he's like, it was Robert the doll.
Just to give an alternate perspective, I would like to think that like that guy's not superstitious, but he knows that his girlfriend is.
Yeah, he's like, it's a perfect excuse.
Yeah, like,
I fucked up.
He blamed his negligence on Robert the doll, knowing that she would give him a pass, because she's like, oh, it could have been Robert the doll. You said stuff about him earlier. Like, and maybe that's a reason for people to want to date superstitious people, because, like, every now and then you can just blame bad things that happened on shitty stuff, and they'll give you a pass.
Yeah, he was like, it must be Robert the doll.
But at the same time, I mean, I would say, okay, you did say that he can... Robert the doll doesn't like it when people disrespect him.
Yeah.
So maybe it's more of a feeling. So, like, you know, if you and I were to go take pictures of Robert the doll, and you took a picture and you sent it to someone, and you're like, wow, it's Robert the doll, can you believe it?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't feel like, it doesn't get any vibes of disrespect from you. And then I take a picture and I send to someone like, look at this dumbass doll. Yeah. Like, maybe it gets the vibes from me. So it's not so much about that. It's more of like, it can tell you're being disrespectful.
Yeah, it can tell what your intentions are.
Yes. And then that's when it's like, all right, you're going to pay.
That's another thing. Some people said when they tried to take pictures of him, their electronics malfunction. So he's like, nope, fuck you, you're not getting a picture.
Yeah. You suck.
But,
if I was going to build a creepy museum with haunted artifacts, I think that I would make sure before we started building that whatever site I chose already had really bad cell service, just to really drive the point in, you know? As soon as people show up and start looking around, they're like, oh, I don't have any service here. And then people, it's all because of all the haunted stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, it must be. But yeah, that's all I have on Robert the doll. You have a doll that you want to talk about?
I have a doll. Yeah, I've got a doll. This one was found in Australia. It is not Australian, but that is where it's found, and that's where the haunting stuff happened.
And this one I've never heard about, surprisingly.
It's the Let Me Out doll.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Letta for short.
Yeah.
So, there was this guy named Carrie, and he goes back to his hometown for a funeral in his early 20s. And while he's there, he remembers that there was this childhood home that he was afraid of, or there was this home in his childhood neighborhood.
Yeah.
That he was really afraid of, and that people always talked about being haunted, and he was just scared to death of it. And he decided that now, while he was back for this funeral, he wanted to go back, now that he's an adult, and he wanted to, like, go into the haunted house, conquer his fears, show himself there's nothing to be afraid
do the
of.
thing he
Just
wouldn't
like
do as a kid.
basically do something for himself, I
Right.
guess. The house is like mostly locked down because it's condemned, obviously. And so the only point of entry he finds is the cellar.
The worst place
Yeah, a couple
possible.
doors to get into the cellar. So like, he's not even like slowly working his way through. He doesn't go through the front door. Like
Right. He doesn't get a
immediately
chance
into the
to
cellar.
Feel it out. He's just
just
dive right
straight
into
in.
the creepiest part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he's walking around in the cellar, and all of a sudden he sees a pair of eyes. Mm-hmm. And he gets freaked out at first. His eyes adjust. He gets closer to it. At first, he was afraid that it was like a dead child that was just laying there in the cellar with its eyes open.
He's like, oh no,
He's like,
I
shit.
made a mistake.
What have I done? This is what I deserve. I'm getting haunted.
But the eyes weren't glowing or anything. Like
No,
you
they weren't
saw-
glowing. Turns out it was the Letta doll, and it had glass eyes. So
Okay,
it was
so-
probably just a reflection that he was
Right,
seeing.
okay.
And he got closer and he saw that it was a doll. He started to feel something creepy, and, after this happening, I assume that's... Even if there wasn't something around, you'd still be
Just
like,
the
all right, that's enough.
situation- Just the situation.
So he
is
grabs the
creepy.
doll and he leaves. He's like, I don't need to see the rest of the house. I'm good.
Why would he take the doll though?
I don't know. He
That's
didn't want to leave
crazy.
it there. He was curious, I guess. I mean, why do the whole thing in the first place? He's curious.
Yeah, right.
So he takes the doll. He throws it in his living room. He leaves it there. He said he was having a hard time sleeping the next few days, just knowing that the doll was there. So he puts it up for sale, and he gets a buyer. And while he's on his way to this buyer, and while he's in the car, as he's driving longer and longer, he starts feeling this restrained feeling, like something keeping him and telling him to go back. And he said it was so strong, it compelled him to turn around, and he left. So he didn't sell it.
Okay.
And he hasn't tried to sell it since then. So he decides to take it to a nearby museum, and he wants to find out if they know anyone he could take a doll to, any specialists that they could like tell him something about the doll, just so we can learn something about it.
Right.
And they actually had some people at the museum that could already take a look at it. They're like, oh no, we can take a look at it.
Yeah,
and
they
looked
already
at
had
it.
information.
And just based on the way that it was crafted and a couple of the nails that were used in the doll, they could tell the doll was over 200 years old.
Holy crap.
Yeah, now it's even older now because this all happened in the 70s.
Right, okay, so that's
So,
really old.
In the 70s, they were already like, yeah, this is like 200 years old.
Wow.
And they said that it looks like it came from Eastern European. It was Eastern European. It looked like it was made from, it looked like Romani craftsmanship, so like gypsies.
Okay.
And yeah, sounds not cursed already, right?
That's a good start.
And it had glass eyes, real human hair, and underneath the scalp, it looked as if someone had fashioned underneath the scalp like a human brain.
Okay. First of all, if you're putting real human hair on a doll and you're trying to make it that realistic to where you're giving it the likeness of a real human brain, it kind of seems like you're intentionally trying to draw some kind of spirit.
It sounds voodoo-ish, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
Like when I read that, the first thing I thought was, this person's trying to make a conduit.
Yeah,
They're trying to put something in it.
that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, so, after finding that stuff out, I guess Carrie thought like we did, and he was like, oh, that sounds strange. And so he took the doll to a couple psychics.
Naturally.
As you do. And the psychics told him that what they could muster from the doll was that it was made by a man whose son drowned, and he fashioned the doll after his son.
Oh, okay. See,
So maybe he was trying to contact his son using the doll?
Yeah, maybe he wanted to use the doll to give his son something to come into and to communicate with him again.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the hair, the real human hair, was his son's.
No way to tell. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like they have anyone to DNA test it with, because it's not like anyone's ever come forward and gone, hey, that's, my ancestor's doll or
But it
something.
is possible, if his intention was to communicate with his son and he had access to his hair,
That he would use his hair?
that he would use it, yeah.
Maybe. But that is what the psychics claim. There's no any evidence of that. It's
Right.
just what they said.
Yeah.
The only evidence that we really have is that the doll is over 200 years old. It's a Romani doll. And then what it's made of. That's the stuff that we know. So
Okay.
it's organic, locally sourced,
So,
100%
did the
Eastern
psychics-
European doll.
Did the psychics give him any more information?
No. That's all they gave him. and they didn't sense any malevolence. So they were like, "Oh, I don't think it wants to hurt you, but here's what we can tell."
So what did he do with the doll after that?
Well, he actually the doll started gaining some notoriety, and so he started taking it on the media circuits. And he took it onto different shows and different people to look at it.
So he decided to keep it.
He decided to keep it because another thing the psychics told him is that, and I did forget this, the psychics told him that he can never give the doll away. They said, if you give the doll away, something bad will happen to you. You have to keep the doll.
So then that explains his dread that he felt when he was going to sell it.
That's why he felt bad. Yeah. That's why he felt like something terrible was happening. And he did keep it. He kept it to this day. And I didn't look up to see whether he's still alive or whether it's been put in a museum somewhere. All that it said when I was reading was that he never gave it away. So whether he's alive or not, he never gave it away.
But that could also explain, if he found it in that abandoned house, maybe whoever owned it before died and kept it because maybe they found out the same thing.
Yeah, and they're like, shit, I can't give it away, but that doesn't mean I have to let it upstairs, so they put it in the cellar or something. This is how I live now. But the doll did do some strange stuff. He would hear voices sometimes. He would hear children's laughter. When the doll would affect people that would come see it, they said whenever they looked at the doll, they'd feel intense emotion, usually sorrow or fear or a mixture of both. And maybe if the whole boy thing is true, maybe that's because of the drowning. Right. That's what they're experiencing.
They're experiencing what he experienced.
People have fainted. People have busted into tears.
They experienced some kind of intense emotional reaction.
Yeah, some sort of psychic layover is happening. They're getting hit by something, basically. Okay. People are feeling stuff. When you pick the doll up, some people say that they can feel the doll pulsing in their hands. And dogs really do not like this doll. They say that dogs go crazy, they bark at it, they growl at it. If dogs can get to it, they will attack it.
See, that makes me wonder, though, because you said it wasn't malevolent, but dogs... for dogs to hate it and want to attack it kind of makes it seem more likely that there would be something
wrong with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know there's a whole thing about dogs and cats in particular, but animals being able to sense supernatural stuff more than people.
Well, just because they're more in tune with nature and they vibe off of energy more than we do because we use our brains and they use their senses more. Yeah. They feel energy.
But what I would counter with is even if that was true, maybe the dogs are just sensing something strong from it. Not necessarily
they're just crazy
bad.
Energy.
Yeah, they're just getting slapped in the face by vibes and they're just reacting to it. It's not so much that it's necessarily bad. They're just something strong.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe, I don't know. But that's all I got on the Let Me Out doll. It is still in Australia as far as I know. And it doesn't seem like it's really out to hurt anyone. It's more sad.
Does this doll look creepy?
Oh, yes. This is a marionette doll. So this doll actually does look creepy. Really exaggerated features. Look up a picture because it does look really cool. You won't be let down by this doll's look. It does creep you out first look.
Well, I'm glad I know about that one now. I had never heard of that before. Well, while we're on the subject, we might as well talk about Annabelle.
Yes, Annabelle.
So most people who know about Annabelle already know that she was originally actually a Raggedy Ann doll. She does not look anything like the dolls they used in the movies.
Yeah. Those ballless filmmakers who just you didn't have to make up this weird porcelain-looking doll. Just fucking use
but you know they
use the real thing.
We have to make it as creepy as possible.
Yeah, the creepy stuff happening around it is enough. That shows you they didn't really believe in it. They were like, no one's gonna believe this shit if we use a Raggedy Ann doll.
Well, and I remember when I found out it was a Raggedy Ann doll, I was like, really? Because those really aren't that creepy. I had a Raggedy Ann doll. A lot of people had Raggedy Ann dolls.
But it's also a doll someone might actually play with too.
Yeah, that's true.
You know? Something you might actually see out there.
Yeah, so Annabelle, so this woman in 1970 went into a thrift store. As we were talking about earlier, you just go to a thrift store and end up with a haunted object. Or
the goddamn 70s.
Right, exactly. So she went in there and bought this doll and gifted it as a birthday present to her daughter, who was a nursing student at the time.
That sounds kind of weird, doesn't it?
Right. Giving a doll to a college student.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like, we don't know everyone. I know people have different experiences, and like, we don't know. It could have been an inside thing where she used to give her dolls, and this was just like a nice, like, maybe nostalgic,
really
like, hey, remember when I used to give you dolls? I'm just thinking of you. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
But it just sounds weird when you say it. It's like a thrift store. She's like, oh, my college-age young daughter would love this doll.
Well, I mean, apparently she didn't mind it. She put it on her bed. She had a roommate who was also a nursing student, and they kept the doll in the house. And so after a while, they started noticing strange things. The doll would move around the house when nobody would move it. They would just find it in different rooms. One day they came into the house and saw Annabelle standing on both legs, which if you've ever seen a Raggedy Ann doll is impossible.
Yeah, it's got no structure. It's like stuffing.
It's cloth and stuffing. So unless somebody's holding it up, like, then that would be really creepy too, walking in and just seeing it standing.
Yeah. I'd be like, nope, this is it. We're moving.
Yeah, exactly.
Doll stays here.
And then they also said that they would find little pieces of parchment paper ripped up with childish handwriting on them. And some of them would say, help us. Some of them said, help Lou. And Lou is Donna, the girl who received the gift. Lou is her boyfriend. And for some reason, there was parchment paper that said, help Lou.
Parchment paper.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Neither Donna nor her roommate said that they even owned any parchment paper.
Oh, okay. I was about to say,
apartment.
Why?
Exactly. So they were like, we don't know where this parchment paper came from. Like, that's really creepy.
It'd be nice if it could conjure up something that they needed, like $100 bills or...
Yeah, exactly.
Just parchment paper is all you get.
Yeah, well, another thing is that sometimes they would find blood on her, and they didn't know where it came from. They couldn't find the source of the blood. Mm-hmm. So almost like she's going out on the town, massacring people and then coming back home.
Yeah. Just, all in today's work, old chum.
Yeah.
Just out, I killed people. You guys were, I was working too.
Yeah, so after a while, they just started getting creeped out, and they decided to have a medium come in and see if she could tell them anything about the doll. And so this medium says that there's a little girl's spirit residing inside the doll, and that it just likes the girls and wants to stay with them. So stupidly, the medium gives the spirit permission to stay in the doll, and the girls give the spirit permission to stay with them, and they keep the doll. Now, things just escalate and get worse. They keep having bad experiences. So Lou, and this explains the help Lou note. Lou, her boyfriend, one day said, they said that he got attacked by Annabelle, and that she was scratching him and attacking him, and he went unconscious. And when he woke up, he thought he was dreaming, but then he had a bunch of scratches and gashes on his chest and his upper torso.
Jesus, Lou.
So she actually attacked him.
Yeah, because the doll, again, it's just cloth and stuffing. It's got nothing to do that with either. So.
Exactly. How would that doll scratch you and draw blood?
Yeah.
That makes no sense. So after things escalated enough, that's when Ed and Lorraine Warren came in the picture. They got help from them because they didn't know what else to do at this point.
Explain who Ed and Lorraine Warren is, just in case anyone hasn't seen the movies. If you haven't
seen the movies and you don't know about them, they are really famous demonologists and paranormal investigators. So they dealt with cases like this all of the time. So they came in and wanted to help these girls, and what they told them was that it was actually a demon possessing the doll, and that it had tricked them into thinking it was an innocent child's spirit, so it would let them stay. But really, the demon wanted to get closer to them to possess one or both of them.
Okay, yeah. So that medium really screwed them.
Right, exactly. So after this, the Warrens just took the doll and they put it in their museum with other cursed objects that they have, and that's where the doll is to this day. And I think that's in Connecticut at their home. And Ed is dead, but I think Lorraine is still alive.
Let me guess. You're not supposed to disrespect the doll?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she's also in a glass case and with a sign that says positively do not open or touch or anything like that. So yeah, a lot of the same stuff. You're not supposed to be disrespectful or taunt her, or bad things might happen to you. So you know how earlier I said there were car crashes that were attributed to Robert the doll, right?
Yeah.
Well, I read something similar in this one case where this guy had gone into the museum and taunted Annabelle. And then after he left, a few miles down the road or something, he died in a motorcycle accident.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's at least, I'm sure at least like for a year after that, no one taunted her.
Yeah, I would say if you're going to go...
about that guy on the motorcycle?
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to go visit Robert the Doll or Annabelle, just to be safe, you should probably not do anything
motorcycles
like
are dangerous, but, you know, just in case.
It's like, even if you're a skeptic and you're like, oh, I can say whatever I want, maybe it's just better not to find out. So, probably just shouldn't do that.
Yeah, find out about supernatural stuff in a different way. Like, test it on something that might be good.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
something that's bad.
Well...
So that's everything you got on Annabelle, huh?
Yeah, that's the end of our haunted, cursed dolls.
Well, I got something that might be a decent transition from dolls. It's masks.
Okay, cool.
So these are the Maori warrior masks, which, if you look them up, they look super cool. All right? This is New Zealand, because it is Maori.
Okay.
And I might be saying that wrong. Maori. No, I think it's Maori. So... These are masks that they wear during battle, and each warrior would carve them themselves. So each person was in charge of their own mask.
Yeah.
All right. They'd wear them into battle, and if you died while wearing the mask, according to the lore, then your soul gets trapped in the mask. So your soul's in the mask.
Okay.
All right. So. Yeah. Instantly, tons of haunted masks. Just from right? You're just guaranteeing a ton of haunted masks. Which, for them, doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. That's the thing, too, is that it's not like then they got a bunch of haunted masks and a bunch of ghosts of warriors went around killing people. It's just like, no, your soul's just kind of hanging out in the mask now.
Yeah.
And that was mainly it. Now, there is one type of person that should wear these masks.
Okay.
And they say that's pregnant women. They say if pregnant women get near the Maori masks, that it can cause complications or miscarriage.
Okay.
So, and I was reading up on that. I was trying to figure out why pregnant women. And the best that I could muster from my reading was basically that pregnant women are sacred. And sacred things are not, and so they're taboo.
Yeah. And
sacred things are not supposed to be brought near things like... dead warrior masks.
Right.
And that's why it might cause problems. I also decided to read a little bit about what their beliefs are in general. Because I was thinking, I was like, why would... If you all believed that your souls would get trapped in these masks if you died in battle, why would you make that... Like, would you want to be trapped in a mask?
No, exactly.
So they believed that the gods communicated... through master craftsmen. So they believe that gods communicated through woodworkers and through people that made wood. Like, even if when they were making wood, if like pieces of wood fell to the wayside that they weren't really using, they would still pick them up and save them. And that's just what they thought. Yeah. So because of that, if you're crafting something like an intricate mask, gods have to be working in you in some way there too.
Okay.
Right? So it wasn't considered like a bad thing for you to get trapped in this.
Okay.
It was just something that could happen. But their beliefs are very, very much in the line of spiritualism. They just believe everything kind of has energy and power.
Right.
The ocean, the sea, the sun, grass, like animals, like everything. It is very much reminds me of just spiritualism in general.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different cultures that I find have spiritualistic kind of beliefs. Yeah. So, it wasn't too hard to understand. But, like any good religion, eventually it devolved into classism. Because here's what happened. The whole energy thing, these beliefs started to sprout up that if you were someone of higher authority or stature, that someone who is inferior to you should not touch your things because they would corrupt it with their energy.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so it's just a good way of like rich people saying, stay away from my stuff.
You're gross.
Yeah, it's exactly it. And I was like, God damn it, even the Maori. Like, yeah, and if you talk to someone, they might try to be like, no, that's not what it's about. But I'm like, come on, what do you know about people in general?
Exactly.
That's totally what it was about.
That definitely.
So like, you couldn't even touch and here's one of the main things, you couldn't even touch their food. You couldn't touch the food of someone who was above you, because that was considered what they would call tapu, which is like infecting their energy with your energy, contaminating it.
Yeah.
You're messing with the power of their rank and that kind of stuff, because power was derived from authority and rank and everything, right? But in my head, it's more like you're telling poor people not to touch your rich food.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So, God damn it, religion always. I don't care how it starts; it's always going to devolve into some sort of classist bullshit.
Yeah.
But all in all, that is the stuff surrounding the Maori warrior masks. And the thing about pregnant women is so widespreadly believed there that even there are some museums
that won't let pregnant women
come to the masks when they have the masks. Yeah. And like, there's been some controversy over it, and they're like, nope, not taking any chances.
Yeah, they're like, we don't want to risk it.
They're like, no, why do you just wait a couple more months and then come see us.
Well, and are there really, I mean, that's funny if there's a pregnant woman who's like really determined to take that risk.
I have to see these masks now.
It's like, why would you do that?
Like, are you angling for an abortion? That's what I would.
Yeah,
be like, you trying to get a free soul abortion?
Yeah, it's like good way to have a miscarriage and not be blamed for it or anything.
Yeah,
or not get an abortion and be be blamed for getting an abortion.
But the Maori warrior stuff is really cool. I would definitely recommend just looking up, like, even if you don't want to deep dive into it, just look up Google Images and look at some of the masks. Some of them are really cool looking, and you just have to admire the craftsmanship.
Yeah. Okay, so like you were saying, though, these aren't... it's not necessarily like terrible. You're not going to be like trapped in it, and then your spirit you'll be like this grieving spirit.
You're suffering.
Yeah.
From what I read, it didn't give me the impression. No, they never talked about it being a bad thing, or like, oh, these haunted masks will, start making things move in your house, and you'll see demons and stuff. Yeah. Like, no, it was just like, no, their soul's just kind of hanging out in there, and they're cool with it.
Okay, cool. Well,
almost like they made it for themselves.
Yeah.
Listen, these masks are like Pokeballs. They just capture the souls of these warriors in battle. And that's where they stay. And they're totally fine in there, and don't ask any more questions. Pokemon.
Bitch, I choose you.
I choose you. But yes, that's everything I have on the Maori masks.
Okay, well, I have a couple of paintings that I want to talk about. Haunted paintings are really fascinating, especially because these are things that people put in their homes, and they purchase to put in their home. So anytime something happens, like, it's happening to people in their own home. Yeah,
it's like, you brought it here.
So, I mean, some people might have already heard of this. This painting is called The Hands Resist Him.
The hands resist him?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a painting of a little boy, and he's standing next to this doll. The doll kind of looks sad. It's creepy, too. And there are hands, like, kind of reaching out through darkness to the boy and the doll. So you just see, like, the hands, and you don't really see anything behind the hands.
Disembodied hands reaching out to him.
And the kid is kind of scowling at the viewer.
Okay.
And like I said, so the kid almost looks more evil than the doll does in this painting.
Like, he's unhappy with you.
Yeah. So this was created by an artist named Bill Stoneham, and it's been deemed one of the most haunted objects in the world. It was painted in, of course, 1972. Mm-hmm. So much of this stuff is from
goddamn
the
70s.
Yeah. And it was first purchased by a famous actor in Hollywood, John Marley. And then it was owned by a couple from California prior to being put on eBay. And I think they were the ones who put it on eBay. And within their post were warnings about the painting and all the things that happened to the people who have owned it. One of the things was that sometimes you'd look at it and it would just look like a blank canvas. And then at night, the painting would move around, and the couple who owned it claimed the little boy in the painting would materialize in the room where the painting was. Some people said that they would feel sick after looking at it. Kids would look at it and then run away screaming, like they saw something that scared the shit out of them, basically.
If there's anything that I've been tempered to believe about ghost paintings, it's that if there's something that is missing from the painting, it means it's walking around somewhere.
Right, I mean...
So if the whole painting is blank, you're like, oh, fuck. Everything is, like...
Everything in the painting is out, roaming around.
Yeah, it's like, the painting's behind me now, isn't it?
The whole painting put back together behind you.
It's just the kid scowling, like, behind you in the doorway, and... in the dark hallway,
standing next to
the
him.
dark hallway behind him, hands are coming out. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, so the hands reaching out, some people said that they would feel hands touch them, but they wouldn't see anything. So even people looking at it online said that they would feel sick or have an overwhelming sense of dread while they were looking at it.
This is one talented painter.
Right, exactly. One person who was trying to print a picture of it out on eBay, said it wouldn't print. It seemed like the printer was broken, but then after they gave up and they started printing other stuff, everything was fine, and it worked fine. So now it's in a gallery in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and they contacted the original painter to tell him about all of the stories surrounding the painting. And he was surprised. Like, he didn't know why. He was like, really?
He's like, I'm just a regular guy who paints stuff.
Yeah, so he found out.
While he's, like, really on the other side of the phone, he's, like, wearing his cult robes and freshly sacrificed goat in the other hand. He's like, I have no idea what you mean.
No, but he did tell them that the two people who had originally displayed it and reviewed it died a year later. The two people, I guess they both died at the same time a year
separately?
later? I don't know. I
But, like, nothing about him. So maybe it's nothing to do with the painter himself.
Maybe it's the energy surrounding the painting, or...
At the same time, though, he's the one that made it, and it's clearly really creepy and very, like, oddly symbolic.
That's true. It still came out of his brain.
So it's very hard for me to believe that, like, the haunting of it or whatever weirdness happened with it happened after he painted it. It seems like, dude, come on, this came from you.
Yeah, maybe he just pretended to be shocked.
Yeah.
And was like, well, then maybe if I give them a little piece of information and I sound surprised, I'm like, oh, well, these people did die a year later.
There was a couple people that died. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, exactly.
Real tragedy.
But yeah, you can look that
Strangled
up online.
They were.
Look up the painting, because it is creepy. It's called The Hands Resist Him. And so I have another one. This one is really freaking creepy. Just looking at it, even if you didn't know that it was supposedly haunted, if you just came across this painting, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's creepy. It's called The Anguished Man, and it's exactly what the name says. It's a man who looks...
in complete anguish.
Exactly.
I have actually seen a picture of this one. This one is very creepy.
Yeah. Okay, so this painting was given to an old lady as a gift, and by a friend, and she insisted that the painting was evil. She kept it in her attic for like 25 years, and then after she died, her grandson inherited it, Sean Robinson. So, and he recalled hearing stories about it from his grandmother, that the artist committed suicide shortly after finishing it, and that he used his blood to paint with. He mixed it with some of the oil, so his blood is on the painting.
So he did this on purpose.
Yeah, maybe he he was like, if I want to live on through my art after I'm dead, I'll just mix my blood with it.
Yeah, and then he just gave it to one of his friends? Just randomly gave...
I guess so. All it said was that the old lady was given the painting by a friend, so... But if she knew those things about his suicide and him mixing the blood, so maybe it was like a friend of a friend who painted it. I don't know.
Okay, so like, yeah, so this was given to her under very sad or troubled
Yeah.
circumstances.
Yeah.
It wasn't like some guy named Jim was like, "Here you go, Grace. I made you a painting," and she's like, "This is terrifying, and you're evil, but I'll keep it."
Yeah, no, it's like, well, this dude died. Here's, do you want his painting or
Yeah,
something?
and
I
she's
don't
like,
know.
"Well, it's a painting," and then she sees it, and the guy from the picture that I saw, the painting of the anguished man, he looks like if you walked into a home that had been caught on fire and a bunch of people inside of it died.
Yeah.
He would look like one of the like charred corpses on the
Yeah,
ground.
he kind of does. He looks burned or something.
He looks like he was burned while screaming. Like,
and if you
it's
look at
pretty
it, though,
bad.
with the colors that make him up, it kind of... I don't know if you can tell that there's blood in it or if that's just the color choice that the artist used, but it kind of looks like there is blood on it.
Yeah, I would describe the colors as meaty.
Yeah.
He looks like meat that you're throwing on the grill.
Yeah, he kind of does, yeah. So this guy who inherited it, Sean Robinson, he didn't believe it was haunted or evil at first. Like, he was doubtful of anything supernatural or any kind of paranormal activity. Now he says he definitely believes it's haunted by an evil entity. So, you know, he had it in his house for a while, and, you know, mostly it was just like a conversation starter. It was just like something to talk about. Other than that, it really didn't phase him one way or the other. But after a while, him and his wife started hearing crying coming from the corner of their bedroom, and they would see a dark figure at the foot of their bed. And after that, his wife was like, screw this, I don't want this painting in our house anymore, like, do something with it. So he decided to give it to a couple of paranormal investigators who took it around to some of the most haunted places in the UK. They, like, took this painting with them
What?
to these haunted places. I guess to see what kind of activity they could get off of it. You know?
But then, you know, it's not very scientific. You're mixing variables.
Yeah, you
How
are.
are you supposed to know if it's the house that's haunted or the painting?
That's what I was going to get to, because, okay, they decided to do a seance at this castle, Chillingham Castle, in 2013. And so they were doing this seance, they were in a circle, and one of the investigators started asking questions to the painting. Mm-hmm. And so I think there were like 20 paranormal investigators there. They were present and like witnessing this. They said that they saw this big dark figure appear in the middle of the circle. And so as they were asking it questions, this big wooden bench that was in the room like slammed down seemingly on its own. So then they were asking it more questions, and then the bench got flipped over, like, violently. And they were like, oh, we think it's this ghost that haunts the castle, John Sage, that just was, like, doing it in response to the questions being directed toward the painting. Kind of just, like, making his presence known to the, like, this unwanted spirit.
Uh-huh.
But it's like, how would you know which spirit turned over the bench?
Exactly.
You're really just making assumptions at that point.
That's the problem
like,
with you.
It's this other ghost, John Sage, and he's interacting with this spirit that we brought in. It's like, you don't freaking know that.
Yeah, and like now you mix them. You'll never know.
Yeah.
One at a time.
So
Ghosts don't like crowds.
So I don't know if they still have this painting. I really don't know what happened to it. They might still have it. But it's, let me see, I can't remember what their group is called. Mysteria Paranormal. They might still have the painting. I don't know. But if you want, like, look up a photo of it on Google, and it is really creepy. And just that the artist mixed his blood with it and everything makes it even more creepy. Maybe he really did live on through his art because he did that.
Yeah. It was a ritual.
Yeah. And if he committed suicide, he obviously wasn't a happy person.
No.
Anyway.
I mean, just making that.
And just looking at the painting.
When you look at the painting, you're like, whoever made this wasn't happy about making this.
No, exactly.
I'm anguished.
But yeah, those are the two paintings that I wanted to talk about. Pretty creepy.
All right, yeah, no, I think the anguished man looks more visceral.
Yeah.
But I would say the hands
resist him.
I think that one has way cooler stories around it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And is ultimately the cooler haunting one.
Yeah.
But I have something that you're definitely not expecting.
Okay.
The Tallman bunk beds. That's right, haunted bunk beds. That's right.
That's a first.
Nothing is sacred. Nothing is safe. Yeah. So this happened in Horicon, Wisconsin. Horicon. Horicon.
Yeah,
Horicon.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Horicon, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Not in the 70s. 1987.
Okay, sweet.
But maybe, I'll tell you. So it was 1987 that a couple bought these bunk beds at a secondhand shop.
Yeah.
So it's a secondhand shop. Maybe it was made in the 70s. And that's when it was haunted. They don't know where it came from originally, but as soon as they got these beds, they put them in the kids' room. These were the kids' beds. Radios in the house started turning on and off on their own. Doors and chairs moved. They would slam and open on their own. Chairs would just move across the floor. And, most importantly, a witch-like figure started appearing to the children.
Ooh.
Like, this figure would look dark, like it was always, at night, obviously.
Yeah.
And it'd be in the dark, and they said it had long black hair, and it looked like a very ugly woman. And it would just, stand near the children's beds.
Maybe it was the old hag. Do you know, all of the lore surrounding the old hag? There's, the old hag where, all over the world people see this old woman who sometimes tries to choke them or make them feel like they're drowning, or she just, hovers over them, just scares them all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
People have dreams about her or swear to God that they've seen her in their bedroom, so that just makes me think of the old hag.
Could be the old hag, right?
Could be.
Or, again, maybe it's haunted bunk beds, and when it's a conduit, kind of like how we talked about Crossroads before.
Yeah.
It just draws things in.
Yeah.
Maybe conduits just draw things in.
Yeah. That's
but
also.
They do claim that this old witch-like woman is a big part of this.
Okay.
At one point, the kids are getting so scared that... they also hear voices calling to them from, rooms that are empty.
Okay.
So stuff like that all the time. The kids are getting so scared that the parents have enough, and at one point the father starts stomping around the house, screaming at the spirits, telling them to leave the kids alone and come after him.
Probably not the best idea.
Right, but also, commendable.
I get it though, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, leave my kids alone. You want to mess with someone, you mess with me.
Yeah.
So, a couple days later, at some point, he hears a disembodied voice calling to him, telling him to come to the garage. And he goes to the garage, because he's never seen a horror movie in his life.
Exactly.
And while he's in the garage, he said that he saw, right outside the window, these fiery eyes on someone looking at him through the window of the garage.
Okay.
Yeah. And he leaves the garage.
Naturally.
Yes,
because
you should. You don't go investigate further.
Nah.
You already fucked up by going in the first place, but, now you leave.
Yeah.
He said later that night he went to go sleep in the bed with the kids, because the kids were scared to death still.
Yeah.
And he saw a fog coming into the room, and then he saw a green figure, or not a green figure, a dark figure come up from the fog with, green fiery eyes and tell him he was dead.
Okay, that is really creepy.
Yeah, and then it, flashed away, just, disappeared.
Okay.
So he was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
And another point, and again, I don't know, there's a lot missing in between this. It doesn't exactly give you the whole, it's not like it tells you a fluid story. They're just here are things that happened.
Yeah.
The father's gone at some point, and he's out of town, and someone who is very skeptical of this sort of stuff stays with the kids and the mother. I think it was an aunt or an uncle or something. Stays with them and said that they saw the figure in flames.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe having somebody who's skeptical, see, that could be good or bad. 'Cause on the one hand, maybe it wouldn't encourage anything to happen, but on the other hand, depending on whatever is doing the haunting,
pissed it off more.
Yeah, they're like, I'm gonna prove I'm real.
Yeah. So like it feels like it's a challenge or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So.
It's like, oh, you don't think I'm real? I'm about to scare the shit out of you.
I mean, they made the point of saying they were skeptical, so that while they were in the house, they were probably talking shit the whole time.
Yeah, maybe.
And then they saw this fiery figure, and then they said they knew that place was haunted.
Yeah.
And they ended up, it doesn't say when, but they ditched their home in the middle of the night. One night, like in the winter. They're just like, fuck it, we're done.
Yeah. Just like, can't
so
take
whatever
it
happened
anymore.
that night, they were done.
Yeah.
And they just ditched the home in the middle of the night. They didn't live there anymore. The bunk beds were moved to a museum in Kentucky, I believe. Mm-hmm. Can't tell you which one. Sure, quick Google search would find out. But a couple other things is that when the story started getting some real traction, people like started sending in threats and stuff because they wanted to just burn the house down. They're like, fucking burn it down. Don't let it spread to anyone else.
Okay, so did the house remain haunted even after the bunk beds were moved? Did the family realize it was the bunk beds after they brought the bunk beds in? They said
everything started after they brought the bunk beds in.
But they just decided to abandon the whole house anyway.
They abandoned the whole house.
They were like, we'll try to get rid of the bunk beds first. They're like, just screw this completely.
Well, maybe it was
here.
I mean, but you know how like these haunting stories go, like it starts with something, but then it's like once you're haunted, you're haunted.
It like infected the rest of the house.
So it's like you're haunted, now you're haunted.
Yeah.
Or the house at least. Maybe it was just like it spread throughout the house.
Yeah, maybe didn't attach onto them
yet. Hauntings are like termites.
Yeah.
Once you let them in, they're hard to get rid of.
Yeah.
So they ditched it, but like they still contend that the bunk beds are the thing that like starts the haunting.
Okay.
So that's why the bunk beds themselves are kind of heralded as the object that starts it all, because no one cares about the house anymore. Now that the bunk beds are gone, no one cares about the house. But they did leave the house. They ended up actually having to give the address of the house out publicly because there were so many threats to burn down the house that were suspected of being the haunted house, because they're like, we want to nip this thing in the bud.
Yeah, they don't want just random houses.
And they didn't. Yeah, they didn't want like a random house of people sleeping to get burned down in the middle of the night because someone was so damn sure that was the house. You know.
So does somebody live there now?
No.
No, fuck
that house.
But is it still there?
From what I was reading, I think it's still there, and I think like sometimes people like to tour nearby or something, but no one's living in it.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, like they all contend that the bunk beds were the big deal. Like the house is more like, hey, there's this story attached to the house.
But people still don't want to live
there. The bunk
there.
beds are what's the bunk beds are what's actually haunted.
Okay.
And maybe it was the wood that was used to make the bunk beds.
Yeah,
maybe that's why.
Be.
So, like, all right, the wood was used to hang witches, and then in the 70s, because fuck the 70s, they decided to use that wood.
Yeah.
They found on some old guy's property and make bunk beds.
Well, yeah, and you never know. It could have been some other piece of furniture before, and it was just refashioned into a bunk bed.
Yeah, they just turned it into a bunk bed, but it was something else. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, who knows? Because bunk beds is such a weird thing to be haunted.
It's very strange.
No one expects bunk beds.
You're like, haunted bunk beds. You're like, what?
Yeah. I do have one more story that I want to talk about that I'm pretty excited about. But first, we got to take a short little break, and then we will come right back.
All right, cool.
And we are back after that short break, and we're going to jump right back into it. So you got something, right?
Yeah, so I wanted to do one on a haunted mirror, just because I think mirrors are interesting. I don't know if you've ever heard that if somebody dies near a mirror, you're supposed to cover it up so that their spirit doesn't get trapped inside of it.
Yeah, I've heard before that a mirror is supposed to be like a window into another world. I've heard that before.
So this one is interesting. It's a short one, so we'll just get through it real quick. But the Myrtle's Plantation Mirror. This mirror resides in one of the most haunted houses in America. It's a bed and breakfast in Louisiana called Myrtle's Plantation. It was built in 1796 on a Native American burial ground. So,
Jesus.
Just terrible idea.
Just asking for it. Sometimes they just ask for it.
Because this was like a slave plantation, and it's on a Native American burial ground.
Yeah.
Oh, so apparently
but like, the people who owned slaves also didn't give a fuck about Native American
true,
burial
yeah.
ground. So, like, yeah, they were really asking for it.
But just both of those things combined just makes for a haunted house.
Yeah.
Apparently there are around 10 murders that have happened there. There have probably been more deaths than that, but murders, they're supposed to be
Specifically
around 10.
murders, yeah.
So the mirror didn't become part of the bed and breakfast until 1980. It sits in the main hallway where people, guests and employees, walk by it all the time, day in and day out. Guests say that they've seen figures standing next to them or walking next to them as they go by. Some have seen children's handprints appear on it out of nowhere, even when there are no kids on the property at the time. So one theory on that is that apparently this woman, Sarah Woodruff, and her children are supposed to be haunting the mirror or possessing it. They were poisoned and killed in their home and they died near the mirror. So, going back to what
Jesus.
I said, nobody covered it up after they died. So
Yeah, they just got poisoned and then they, crawled near the mirror and then just died.
Yeah, so people think that they're haunting the mirror now.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mirror is still in that bed and breakfast.
Sometimes when you're eating breakfast, they just pop out and say, "Don't eat that!"
Yeah, but, in Louisiana, a lot of people know that this place is supposed to be really haunted, and the mirror is popular, too.
So a lot of their business probably comes from people going there purposefully because it's
probably does,
Okay.
I would say. Because if you knew about that and you weren't into that stuff, you probably wouldn't want to stay there.
Yeah, yeah.
People who are afraid of that kind of thing wouldn't choose that as the place to stay.
Which, again, we find that sometimes those are the best people
for
this sort of thing.
With you.
Yeah, because then, you might get to see something.
Yeah. Sometimes people who are really into it just never get to experience anything. And the people who are terrified of anything happening are the ones who it happens to.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
But yeah, that's just a short one. I'm sure there's more on it, but I didn't write that much about it, so...
Hey, that's enough for me. That's already, a crazy little history just for that little thing.
Yeah.
Just for that one mirror.
Yeah, it is really interesting.
10 murders, too.
Yeah.
Jesus. I guess they don't know who poisoned them, huh?
I didn't say. I'm not sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Maybe that wasn't as important as the fact that they just died near the mirror.
Yeah, and that they're now haunting it.
I've got a couple more. There's one. There's not a crazy amount to it. It's just an interesting little tidbit. It's called the Thomas Busby Killing Chair, or some people just call it the Death Chair.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, you know about this one. This happened in Yorkshire, United Kingdom.
Yeah.
1702. Guy named Thomas Busby. He was hanged for killing his father-in-law. His father-in-law was a guy that they called Audi. That was like a nickname for him. Mm-hmm. Apparently the story is that the two would run scams and do criminal activity together.
Yeah, they were cons.
Yeah, and Audi had a daughter that Busby got together with, and Audi was not happy about that. And Busby was also a bit of a drunk. Mm-hmm. I say a bit of a drunk. He was a drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a drunk. Audi didn't like that, and he would try to break up him and his daughter. And the story goes that Audi came to try to take his daughter away one night, and she refused to go, and they're arguing. Busby comes back drunk as usual, and Audi is there arguing with Busby about his daughter, and Busby is not arguing about the daughter. He's drunkenly arguing with Audi about having sit in his favorite chair, because when he showed up, Audi was sitting in his favorite chair at this inn.
So you can already tell this guy is petty as fuck.
Yeah. And he's got a real obsession with this chair. He at this inn, he had a favorite chair, and he would always sit in it. And that's just something that he did all the time, and everyone knew it. And when he came in, Audi was sitting in that chair, and Audi got up to argue with him. And Audi didn't know that the only thing that he was really mad about wasn't the daughter stuff. He was like, he could give a fuck about that. He was like, "You were sitting in my chair." So, Busby sits in his chair, and Audi leaves, and Busby's still pissed off from the argument. And 3 hours later, he walks 3 miles to where Audi is and bludgeons him to death with a hammer.
Jesus.
Yeah. So whenever the police come looking for him, they find Busby just sitting there in his chair afterwards. Just killed him and he went back and sat in his chair.
He's like, this is my chair.
Yeah. They drug him away, and here's where it differs a little. Some people say that he cursed the chair while he was sitting in it when they were coming to look for him. And other people say that he cursed the chair while they were taking him to be hanged. But either way...
I heard one version that was like, they let him have a meal at his favorite bar before he was going to go be hanged, and then he cursed anyone who would sit in his chair after.
Yeah. So there's a couple stories floating around, but basically
the same premise.
The important part is that he cursed the chair. He said, anyone that sits in my favorite chair will die.
Yeah.
And then they hung him.
Yeah.
And they actually hung him like
across the street.
From the inn. Uh-huh. So really close by. So it's like, there's your chair. All right, time to die.
Yeah.
So there are a few different stories surrounding this. I'm going to tell you the more modern ones because apparently there are a ton of stories from the time that Busby died, all the way in like 1702, all the way up to now. But here are some of the more modern recorded ones.
Okay, good, because it's been a while since I've looked into this.
Yeah, I mean, like, in the whole 1700s and 1800s, there were a bunch of different stories of people sitting in the chair and at the inn and then meeting an untimely demise.
Okay, yeah.
But so there's a ton. But I'm going to go over the more modern ones. I'm going to go over the, like, 1900, some of the 1900 reported stories. All right? So, World War II soldiers who sat in the chair... It said never came back from their next mission. There was an airfield nearby, and there was a bunch of airmen, and they mostly did bombing runs. Mm-hmm. And it was said that if they sat in the chair, they didn't come back from their next bombing run. There was a builder. He was an apprentice, and he sat in the chair. And then later that day, he was working on a roof, and he fell through the roof and died. Mm. There was a delivery man who sat in the chair, and by this point, the owner of the inn had enough of people sitting in the chair and dying, so he put it in the basement, and the delivery man went into the basement to go sit in the chair.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't it like he was taking something down there, and then
he saw the chair, and he sat to sit in the chair.
Oh, man.
And he died that night in a car crash. There was a chimney sweep who sat in the chair, and he was found hanging from a gate post across from the inn where Busby was hung.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that night. There was a story of two young Canadian airmen who were daring each other to sit in the chair, and one of them just put his back on the back of the chair for just a second and then got up. And it said that they died that night in a car crash.
Oh my god. See, a lot of these seem more legitimate. You know how we were talking about, like, the dolls and then people dying later, or just getting ill, or getting divorced, or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, these people died very soon after. Like, the same day that they sat in this chair.
Don't get too ahead of yourself, because I got some, like, choppy news coming.
Okay, good.
It's something that's really going to shake it up. Upset the apple cart. So this thing was donated to the Thrisk Museum.
And they hung it up on the wall, didn't they?
Yeah, they hung it up on the wall so no one could sit in it.
Yeah.
So it's, it's hanging up there. It's still hanging up there. Thing is, someone, a specialist, went to go look at the chair, and he said that chair wasn't old enough to have been already around in the 1700s. He said that the way that it was made with a style that wasn't used until the 1800s. So it couldn't be the Busby chair. Or maybe the Busby chair stuff was true and that chair was replaced with another chair later. So some people say that it's not so much the chair itself, it's about a chair that is placed in that spot in the inn.
Yeah.
That was the spot he would always used to sit in.
Right.
And that's the cursed spot.
Yeah, so it could be that.
But, I mean, but also, like, despite what the specialist said, they still have that chair hanging up in the Thrisk Museum.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're like, it was one guy, we'll get a second opinion. Or maybe they were like, there's still a good story to it. People can still come talk about it.
Yeah.
So they have it hanging up there. So, believe what you want to believe as far as that kind of thing goes. But there are a ton of stories surrounding people going to that inn and sitting in that chair.
Yeah.
Or a chair. Now, the last one that I have is really ridiculous.
Okay.
All right. It's the Valentino's Cursed Ring. San Francisco, California. This guy named Valentino was a movie star, a silent film era movie star, right? Mm-hmm. He goes to this shop in San Francisco. He sees this really cool ring. It's a plain silver ring with a semi-precious stone. And he just has to have it. And the story is the shopkeeper told him, warned him that they thought it was cursed. Mm-hmm. And he bought it anyways. He was like, nope, looks cool. I'm a movie star. I want it.
Right.
So, after he bought it, a few years later, his movie started to flop. And then after he went into surgery, I forget what the complication was. He went into surgery for something, and he ended up dying after the surgery, still wearing the ring. So, the ring was passed on to a lover of his, Pola Negri. She was an actress. They called her the Vamp because she so convincingly played a vampire that, like, she was the go-to person for vampires at that time.
Okay.
And even so much so that apparently there were some people who were charged with, I forget, some sort of violent crimes. And those people, like, had a disorder where they thought they were vampires, and they actually brought her in to, like, tell them, because she was, like, the premier person on knowing what people, you know, getting into the mindset of a vampire, or pretending to be one, I guess.
That's a little
ridiculous. It was the 1920s, all right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But yeah, that's what she was famous for. But she was a movie actress as well, a 1920s silent film star. So the ring was passed on to her, and she got sick, and her career ended. So, like, by the time she got better, like, her career was over. She got sick, really sick.
Yeah.
By the time she finally gets better, career's over. After that, she passed it on to a singer, Russ Columbo, and she said that Russ Columbo reminded her of Valentino. So she passed it on to him because it reminded her of the person she got it from in the first place. He died in a shooting accident while shooting a movie. Yeah, not a movie. While just shooting for recordings and stuff. Then it was passed on to a friend of his, Joe Casino. Yeah.
This went through a lot of people.
Yeah. Also a cool name, right?
Yeah.
Joe Casino. Hey, I'm Joe Casino. Passed on to Joe Casino. Joe Casino is the first one that had any bit of sense at first. He kept it under a glass dome. Yeah, that's just where he kept it. But then eventually he broke down and he's like, it's so cool though. And then he wore it. And after he wore it, he died in a truck accident.
Oh my god.
So then it goes to Joe Casino's brother, Del. And Del, being even smarter than Joe Casino, locked it in a safe.
Yeah.
Okay, so
just out of sight, out of mind. Hopefully.
Yeah, he just put it in a safe. He's like, now I won't be reminded of how cool it is and want to wear it. He put it in a safe somewhere, and that's where it stayed.
These people are weak.
Or at least that's what you thought.
Yeah.
Because he put it in the safe, but a guy named Willis broke into his house, stole it from the safe.
Oh my
The
gosh.
alarms went off, alerting the police, and while Willis is trying to get away, running from the house, he gets shot dead by the police with the ring in his pocket.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So...
This is already really ridiculous.
So it was returned to Casino. Willis is dead. Casino's like, I'm smart. I kept it in the safe.
Like, I'm glad I did that.
But finally... All right, well, later down the road, there's a director, Edward Small, and he wanted the ring because he wanted to make a movie about Valentino, and he knew that the ring was, like, a big part, like, he always wore it, you know?
Yeah.
So, he gets it, and he gives it to the guy who's playing Valentino in the movie, a guy named Jack Dunn. He's a very little-known actor. He wasn't a big name or anything.
Yeah.
So, he gives it to Jack Dunn. Jack Dunn started wearing the ring around just so he could try to help get him into the mindset of being Valentino. And Jack Dunn, 2 weeks later, died of a blood disease.
I was going to say, does this guy know that all the deaths surrounding this ring?
He did. He was probably like, it was a long time ago, but just superstition.
I want to be in this movie.
Died of a blood disease 2 weeks later.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, I don't know what happened to it after that. I assume that it went back to the casino family.
Yeah, maybe they just walked
since they were
away
the
for
owners.
good.
Yeah.
Like, screw this, we're not letting anybody else.
I didn't it didn't say what happened to it, so I don't know where it is now. Maybe it's in a museum somewhere, maybe. But more importantly, Valentino is buried in a cemetery in Hollywood somewhere, where like a bunch of other stars are buried apparently. And people say that they've seen his ghost walking around the cemetery, and they say that his ghost is looking for the ring because he wants to destroy it. So his ghost is walking around searching for the ring, trying to destroy it to get rid of the curse.
Maybe
because no one's ever said that like the ghost has like been a dick to them or scared them or anything. Like they just say he's just walking around like he's looking for something.
Yeah. See, so I wonder if after that actor died, maybe Joe Casino destroyed it. Or just decided to lock it away for good.
Maybe, but you would think if that was the case, then... I mean, if you destroyed it, should be no ghost, right? Valentino's got nothing...
Technically,
unless
but
that
maybe
we,
the
unless,
ghost doesn't
you
know.
maybe that we know of. Maybe he doesn't even care about the ring. He's walking around for something else.
It would be cool to know what happened to it, though.
Yeah, it would. And I'm sure just a small amount of research could probably find that. I looked through a few different articles that didn't say anything about it, and I was like, well, damn.
That's a lot of people who had this ring and then died.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Oh, and just to end it on a nicer note, every year on Valentine's Day, fans of Valentino go and place gifts and Valentine's Day cards on his grave.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, a little something for Valentino. Valentine for Valentino.
Just no rings. Don't put any rings.
No rings. Don't. And don't propose in his presence.
Yeah.
If he sees a ring, he'll like the ground starts
He might try to
shaking.
destroy
He's
it.
like, no. just the ring just flies out of your hand and disintegrates, and you're like, oh, it was like 5 months' salary.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, that one's really cool. I'd never heard of that one either.
Yeah, no one knows where the ring came from.
Interesting.
But I have a theory that I think would be cool.
What?
It was a plain silver ring, and he bought it in San Francisco, California in the 1920s. So Mexico has a lot of silver deposits. Mm-hmm. So, and San Francisco, California is not too far from Mexico. It'd make the most sense for them to get their silver from Mexico.
Yeah.
So I would like to think it's some sort of Aztec curse.
Oh, that would be really
either
cool.
on the ring or on the semi-precious gem or both.
Yeah.
So silver deposits came from Mexico, from a cursed land. And so anyone who wears it dies. And the only way to stave off the curse is to either not wear the ring at all, and keep it out of sight, because apparently if you just keep it under glass,
it's so appealing.
it start calling to you.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, wear me. It's like the Lord of the Rings ring. It's like, oh, wear me. And you're like, oh, I must.
Well, but so I wonder if people who just touched it and handled it died, or if it was just people who wore it.
It doesn't look like it. It looks like you have to wear it.
Yeah.
But it does seem like you really want to wear it.
But the guy who just had it in his pocket, who stole
That's
it.
That's true. So maybe you just have to have it on your person.
Yeah.
You don't have, it just has to belong to you in some way, and it has to be on your person. Because remember,
And maybe
nothing
you
happened to
have
the guy.
desire it enough.
The guy who just set it down and put it under a glass dome. Things
Yeah.
were fine until he like grabbed it and decided
That's
to start
true.
wearing it. So it can't just be like
So
around.
yeah, maybe it has to be touching you.
It has to be on your person, I think. Yeah, because it makes a point to say people were wearing the ring.
Right.
People just kept wearing it.
Well,
The
the shop owner might have handled it, but...
Well, the director who got it for that actor who was playing Valentino,
Yeah.
I mean, he got the ring for him.
That's true.
But Jack Dunn is the one who was wearing it. He just got it to give it to him, and then Jack Dunn's the one who started wearing it around. And it takes a little time, sometimes.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's
so-
as fast as dying like a few minutes later by getting shot.
Yeah, so it's
and
a
sometimes
little gray. It's not...
Sometimes it takes a couple weeks to give you a blood disease. But yeah, that's all I got. I wanted to end on the Valentino one because I just thought that was super cool.
Yeah, that's
and
a really
I've
good
never
one.
heard of that one before.
I know, that's crazy.
Insanely awesome, like Haunted Ring.
That one's really cool.
I think Haunted Rings are my favorite now.
I'm surprised I've never heard of that one.
I want a haunted ring. I just wanna, like a Captain Planet ring, but I shoot ghosts at people.
You're like, now you're haunted.
You're haunted, and you're haunted, and you're haunted. I just go around finding corrupt people of companies who are like dropping oil in the Gulf of Mexico, or
you go around literally saying "curse you" with your fist in the
Yeah,
air,
curse
but you're
you.
like, no, really, curse
and it
you.
works. Yeah, and like lightning comes out of nowhere. They're like, oh, it's a clear day. What the hell? It was light out a second ago.
Oh, that one's great.
Yeah, but that's the end of it. And that's the end of this
glad
episode.
We got through all of these.
Yeah, I am too. I really liked some of these.
Yeah, these are awesome.
And there's plenty more, so we could do another one.
Yeah, totally could.
Easily. Probably won't do an objects one right away because there's so much other stuff to delve into too.
Yeah.
But I think we should do another supernatural interesting one.
Yeah.
Come back to the
absolutely.
objects another time maybe. There were a bunch that I saw that we could have done.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot more out there, so... But we'll be doing more of these in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed this.
Yes, and as always, I've been Tweester.
And Daniela.
And we will catch you next time.